Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Andrew Musgrave. Hope you guys are all doing well. Newcastle United head down to the King Power Stadium this evening to face Leicester City in the Premier League, and what is a huge game for the Magpies in terms of qualification for the Champions League for next season. We already had the match preview with John Gibson and the view from the opposition with Jordan Blackwell, who's a Leicester City reporter. If you haven't tuned into them, do head over to the relevant channels and make sure you do, because there's some great insight on offer from two fantastic guests. But I couldn't let the day pass without talking about the results that have gone over the weekend, because really they've gone in Newcastle United's favour, particularly that 0-0 draw between Chelsea and Brentford, and the same scoreline between Manchester City and Manchester United. Yes, we had Aston Villa beating Nottingham Forest 2-1, so not the ideal result there, but it's the other two that we have to focus on, because it leaves Newcastle United with the chance, if they get a high scoreline in the night, to finish the Monday in 4th position. And I mean, the scoreline would have to be 8-0, but never say never. Leicester City are that poor. I'll run through the table quickly before we talk a little bit more in depth about what's on offer this evening. Chelsea in 4th, 31 games, a goal difference of 17 with 53 points on the board. Man City in 5th, 31 games played, 17 goal difference, 52 points on the board. And Villa in 6th, 31 games, 51 points on the board and a goal difference of 0. And then Newcastle in 7th, 29 games played, goal difference of 10 points, 50. So a win this evening, no matter what the scoreline, will take them above Aston Villa and Manchester City. And like I say, it would have to be a scoreline of at least 8 to get them above Chelsea, but they would go level with a win. And then if you look ahead, I don't want to do this too often, but we will just mention it. Newcastle, if they win this evening, would then only be 4 points off Nottingham Forest, who lie 3rd, and have a game in hand. So in many ways, it's more than just winning tonight. It's what you could also achieve going forward. Could you even consider 3rd position as a viable option? But we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. It's all about this evening. And if we're being honest, ladies and gents, this is a game that Newcastle United must win. It is absolutely unthinkable that they don't pick up 3 points this evening, because Leicester City are one of the worst sides to ever have graced the Premier League. I mean, they are absolutely dire. Let me just run you through some stats, right? Leicester have lost 7 successive Premier League home matches without scoring. No side in Football League history has lost 8 home league games in a row without finding the net. Could be this evening, ladies and gents. The Foxes have lost 10 Premier League home fixtures this season. They've never lost 11 at home in a single league campaign in 141 years of history. They're just in a very bad moment. I think it's 15 games out of 16 that they've lost. They can't score goals. Their midfield is constantly overrun, and defensively they're very, very vulnerable. So this has to be a win for Newcastle United. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. This has to be a win. If they're serious about qualifying for the Champions League, then this is the game that you should win with your eyes closed. No disrespect to Leicester City, but the levels that we're talking about here and the hopes and ambitions are so far apart. If Newcastle United are going to be a top 4, top 5 side, then games like tonight, they win. And they win comfortably. I mean, I don't care, to be honest, how the win comes. Could be 1-0 off the backside of Fabian Schär. I don't really mind. But if everything goes Newcastle United's way, and if we're talking about what they should be doing, they should be winning this game 2-3, 4-0. That being said, you can never underestimate any team in the Premier League. There are no easy games, and I'm sure the message that Eddie Howe is delivering to his side is that you've got to be switched on. You've got to be focused. Yes, they're not scoring goals. Yes, they're conceding a boatload of goals, but they are still threatening if they get the opportunity. Give Jamie Vardy a sniff and he'll put one in the back of the net. So you can't switch off, you can't disrespect them, but you don't want to show them too much respect. If we're talking about levels, this is a Newcastle United win, and I will be very disappointed if indeed they don't come away with all 3 points. Now I know, look, a lot of you watching and listening to this will be saying, but this is Newcastle United. There's something in the back of my mind which says they're going to mess this up. And I feel you. I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But part of me thinks that feeling when it comes to Newcastle United is nearly empty, for want of a better phrase. because Eddie Howe has turned his side into a team that does what is expected of them, and they should be beating teams like Leicester City. I know this season they have fallen against inferior sides and it's been a bit up and down, but 9 games left, Champions League on the table. We have to hope that they do what is expected and they beat the likes of Leicester, they beat the likes of Ipswich coming up. These are the games that get you into the Champions League, and then you can go into games like Chelsea next month, of course, battling for that other place, full of confidence. Let me know what your team talk will be. What would your message be in the dressing room? I've said mine there. Let's talk about some injury news then. Of course, we are waiting to see whether Alexander Isak will be available to start this evening. My gut instinct tells me that he will be past fit enough to be involved, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the bench. And it's a difficult one because there is a balance, and time isn't on Newcastle United's side. As we said, there are 9 games to go. You've got 3 teams above you. If Alexander Isak is fit enough to be on the bench, many of you would say he's fit enough to start, and I get that, I understand that, but there'll be other arguments which say, well, actually, look, it's against Leicester City, they're pretty poor, why not play Callum Wilson from the start? Let's hope he can get on the score sheet, and then you save the legs in Isak for bigger tests coming down the road. Manchester United, I know not too much of a bigger test, but still a little bit of a bigger test next Sunday, for example, and you just make sure that he's fit for the final 8 games instead of maybe rushing him back for this evening. Not to suggest that's what Newcastle will be doing, but if there's a chance that he's not ready, do you play him? I don't think you do. It's one of those. Let me know in the comments. And look, it's slightly different to Anthony Gordon versus Harvey Barnes. You've got a position there in which a winger is doing absolutely fantastic, and Harvey Barnes has really seized the opportunity that's been handed to him when it comes to Gordon's suspension and now this injury. Of course, he picked this injury up against Albania for England. My gut instinct tells me he won't travel. He certainly won't start, Gordon. And I don't think there's any need to do so because Barnes is performing so well, performed really well in the final, got the assist against Brentford. And I think he knows that this is his time. This is his time to really show people, particularly Eddie Howe, what he can do. That it's not just going to be easy for Anthony Gordon to walk straight back in to that side, but that's also why it makes it a little bit easier if Gordon does sit this one out and he's back next week against Manchester United. You compare that to Wilson and Isak. Wilson, a fantastic finisher. Against Brentford, though, when he came on, he looked a little bit leggy, a little bit robotic. He doesn't carry the same threat that Isak does. He doesn't offer enough of a replacement like Barnes does for Gordon to make that decision as easy as to say, Isak, sit this one out for next week. So that's why I think a lot of people will say, if Isak's 80% fit, you play him, because you can't guarantee Wilson scoring. You can't guarantee Wilson doing what Isak does. But it is a balance, it is a dilemma. Let me know in the comments what you think. The other one is Kieran Trippier. I think he'll be fit. I think he'll start this evening. Be the same back four that we've seen in recent weeks. Livramento on the left, Trippier on the right with Byrne and Shea in the middle. You might want to talk about Joe Linton. He had a bit of a knee issue against Brentford, but again, I think he'll be fine and he'll be fit and raring to go. We have to watch out though, because is it 1 yellow card? Yeah, he's 1 yellow card from receiving a 2-match ban. So he has to not pick up a yellow card this evening. He managed not to do it against Brentford, but that would be a huge blow going into the final few games if you're missing Joe Linton for 2 games. We have to hope that he keeps that discipline. We saw Bruno do it. Was it last season he did it when he had to go a few games without a yellow card and he managed to go the entirety of the season, I think it was, until that ban was up. We have to hope Joe Linton does it, but he is a bit of a brute. He is a bit of a tank. He does like to pick up a yellow card because of that physicality that he brings to the pitch. But fingers crossed he can avoid it, because he's going to be absolutely crucial going into the final run-in. I mean, could you imagine if Joe Linton picks up a yellow card this evening and misses next Sunday against Manchester United, when I think he'll just be in his absolute element. So fingers crossed he doesn't pick up the yellow cards and still can manage to put in a brilliant performance as he did against Liverpool and as he did against Brentford, which I think went a little bit under the radar. I did a video on that last week. What's the score going to be then, ladies and gents? What is the score going to be? I think it's going to be comfortable for Newcastle United. I really, really do. And it ought to be. I'm going to go 4-0. It's not often I predict a very, very big score, but I am going to go 4-0. That's going to be my score prediction. I think there can be some goals from the midfield. I'm going to go for a Bruno goal. I'm going to go for Harvey Barnes goal. Header as well, let's say from Dan Burn. And the fourth one, I'm going to go Alexander Isak, ladies and gents. Alexander Isak as well. He's going to get on the score sheet. And we will see Newcastle United up to 5th, joint on points with Chelsea. I don't think they're going to manage to get 8 goals, unfortunately. But Chelsea have got a horrendous run in. So the best thing Newcastle United do, other than getting 8 or 9 goals, is to make sure they just win this evening and apply the pressure to Chelsea, get ahead of Villa, get ahead of City, and they can go into the final 8 games after this evening having picked up a victory in really high spirits. And again, Newcastle next weekend, we'll already know what's entailed of them, what they need to do, because of the play on the Sunday, of course. And I think tonight, in many ways, is a benefit playing the last game of the weekend's round of fixtures, because you know what's needed of you, and they will do it. They'll do a professional job. But yeah, Newcastle United 4, Leicester 0 is what I'm going for. Fingers crossed that scoreline comes in. But to be honest, as I said, I don't really care what the score is, as long as Newcastle United pick up all 3 points. Hopefully they do. Let me know in the comments what you think of any of the things we've talked about in the last 10 minutes or so. Who starts? Will Kieran Trippier be fit? Will Alexander Isak be fit? Let me know in the comments. Would you pick Gordon or Barnes if both are available? Let me know your thoughts. It's been a pleasure as always, and this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. Do click the link in the podcast description box to get an exclusive offer on your NordVPN plan. Thank you to Nord as always for sponsoring the podcast. It's been a pleasure to chat to you guys, and enjoy the game this evening.